Welcome back, and we are heading into episode 4 where we learn how to get data into tables and how to remove data from those tables. Now, the aim of the episode is to cover the methodology that SQL Server uses to work with data, extracting it and then putting it into tables. We're going to cover the insert function, which is used to insert data into a brand new row. Then we'll look at update, which is the function used to manipulate or change data within a row that's already existing in our table. And lastly, we'll look at how we actually remove data from those tables. But first, we're going to go over the homework questions from episode 3 to see how well you got on with those. Okay, so we're in SQL Server Management Studio. You have probably opened it quite often now, so you're quite used to going in. And here we have a query which I designed, which covers the homework answers. So let's go through it. Question 1 was to create the database internet sales. Pretty straightforward stuff with the create database command. Next, we had to create 3 schemas, remembering that we needed to switch to our internet sales database before we created those schemas, and we just simply use the command create schema. Now you have sale, product and customer. Easy stuff. Question 3 was to create an orders table in the sales schema with 4 columns, not forgetting when you write it under the create table command, you need to put the schema full stop, then orders. We had a cheeky identity, a column in there on the order ID, and a default as well for the order date. Question 4 was to create an order lines table, again in the same schema, the sales schema, and we had quite a few columns in there, quite a lot of ints, but we did have a decimal column thrown in there, as well as a computed column where we take the line amount, times it by 0.15 to get the line tax. Happy so far? Question 5 was the products details into the product schema, so we need to change the schema there compared to what we were doing before. And again, we have an identity column with a default and a few varchar columns thrown in for good measure as well, different lengths of those. Question 6 was the customer details, again in a different schema. We're using the customer schema here. We have another identity column with a default and of course quite a lot of varchar columns in there. That was pretty much it for the homework. Straight and simple, but it's good to solidify your skills from episode 3. So how well did you do? Well, let's see how well I did. We're going to execute that. And command completed successfully. So in one go, I created a database, changed the database in use, created the 3 schemas and 4 tables. Let's see how that turned out. Click on databases, refresh. There you have it, internet sales. Open that up to the tables, and there we have the 4 tables. Excellent stuff. I'm sure you went fantastically well with your homework. I'm going to close that down and we'll begin episode 4. Now we're going to be using the table we created in episode 3, that's the customer sales table, and we're going to need to refer to it as we go through. So there's a nice little trick you can do if you want to see 2 queries open at the same time. As you can see, I've got episode 4 there, episode 3 query, but we want to see the 2 at the same time. So all you need to do is, if you take your mouse up to the top of your second query, click and hold, and then you can drag it away and it breaks it from the top line. Now you can Once you release the mouse, it'll drop it wherever it is. But you've also got these little icons that pop up in the middle of the screen. You can see them there. So I can either slip it in at the top, the left, the bottom, or the right. What we'll do is we'll put it on the right. So all you need to do there is release the mouse, and there you have it. You've got two windows split on the single screen. Now if you've got a really nice widescreen monitor like mine, it's a really useful trick so you can refer to one query when you're working in another. What you can also do is increase the length of these. Let's scroll down here to our table. That's the one we're going to be using. We'll just make sure we've got everything that we can see in this query here, and we'll go across so that we have the columns here and the data types. We can see those right there. Fantastic stuff. So first thing we need to do, as always, is change the database. So we're going to use the use database command or the drop down from there. I'm going to execute the command, and there we have it. Change to my first database. Control R. That's the result screen tucked away nicely. So first step to learn is inserting a fresh new row of data into the table. Now what you've got to do is simply type the command insert into, and then we have to tell SQL Server which table we are going to insert into. So once again, you have to put the schema with a little full stop and specify the table name itself. So we're going to be inserting data into this table that we created in episode 3. Next, it looks like I'm typing out the columns. It's the same format where you start with the open brackets there, the round brackets, and then you list the columns that you want to insert data into. So of course, first of all, we've got the sale ID, etc., etc. Now you notice I haven't put in the order date time, the order small date time, or the order date, or the is return, because I've got default set on those. So if I leave them blank, it will put in a value by default anyway. So I don't need to specify any columns for those. Now you don't need to put those lines in. You can simply comment them out, and then when you do your insert, SQL Server will expect you to put in all the values that are necessary into the columns that allow you to add values. However, sometimes it's good practice, especially starting out, to ensure that you've got those columns written down, so you specify exactly what data, what columns, and which is going to go in. So once you've completed your list of columns you want to insert into, and you've closed it off with the round brackets, we're going to put the values in, and all you do is type in values, and once again open the brackets. Now I've put the data in a line separated by commas, exactly the same format as above, this time just in a line to squeeze it all in on one screen. And the first thing we're going to input is we're going to put the number 1 into the sale ID. Now if you remember, sale ID was an integer, so a number 1 is the right data type. And for any integers or decimals, any sort of numbers, you just simply type the number that you're going to put in. Pretty straightforward. Next, we're going to insert the customer number. So we put a comma there to tell it that we're going on to the next column now. And we're going to insert a 010000, effectively 10,000. But as you remember, customer number was a character data type. So we're going to put in characters in there. Now for all the character data types, we need to ensure that we put these little single quotes at the beginning and at the end, and that specifies that the string of characters that we've got in there are going to be of a data type character. Now obviously that looks like a number, but it has a 0 in front of it. Now to a computer, that's the number 10,000 without the 0 in front, but we need to store it with that 0 in front. So we've got to store it as a character string and not an integer. So that's why we put it in these little inverted commas. So that'll go in there. Next, we've got the customer email address, which we're going to put in again with the inverted comma at the top there, at the beginning and at the end. And of course we're putting in symbols like the at, the full stop, etc. So we need to ensure that it's a character string of some description, and we have the little semicolon there at the beginning, at the end. Country code next, which is a character string, 3 in length. There you have it, GBR, 3 characters in length. Next we have the order ID and order line ID. One's a small int, one's a tiny int, so those are effectively numbers. There you have it. Here's its first order ID and its first order line. That's all there is to it. Next, the order value, which is a decimal. We're going to put 12.59 in there. So that'll be the value of that order line. And no need for a single inverted commas there, as this is a numerical value. Comma, and then we move on to our last column, which is the varchar max, and we're going to put in test sale. Ensure you've got those inverted commas because it's a character string data type, and because as well it's got a space in there. We're going to end that with the round bracket, and for good practice we're going to put in that semicolon. And that is it. That is the syntax used to insert a brand new row of data into your table. So let's see if that will work. Click and hold. Again, just double check you're using the right database, and then hit execute. Oh, we've got an error. So what went wrong there? Let's have a quick read of the error. It says cannot insert explicit value for identity column in the table customer sales. So what have we done there? Let's Control R to get rid of that. What we've tried to do is we've tried to insert the number 1 into the sale ID column, but we've already set the identity on that column. Now it becomes SQL Server's job to input that data there. So what we need to do is just simply delete or comment out that column. You can see one of the commas goes with a red squiggle. Just simply delete that. So now customer number becomes the first column that we are going to enter data into. And of course we need to get rid of this 1 and the comma as well. So we'll get rid of those. Now let's see what happens when we try to insert. There you go, 1 row affected. That's all good news. So we managed to successfully insert our very first row of data into our table. So let's have a look. Let's check out what went in. Once again, highlight the what you're going to execute, and using the sneaky little Control 3 we'll have a view and see what happens. And there you have it. The first row has gone in. We're looking at the sale ID of 1, which has been inserted by SQL Server. It's the very first row, so it begins with the number 1. Customer number has gone in as with a 0 in front, so it hasn't gone in as a number of 10,000. And then you've got the email address, country code, order ID, order line, and we've got our 3 date time types that have gone in. Now you can see the standard date time is in the format of the year, month, dash, day, and then you've got hours, minutes, seconds, and then you've got 0.777, which is your milliseconds. Small date time is very similar format, except it hasn't got your milliseconds. And last but not least, you've got your ordered date, which is just the date value thrown in there. Next we have our decimal value, 12.59, and our computed column has calculated that order tax at 0.15. Is return is the default of 0 that was put in automatically, and there you have our test cell notes. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We have our first line of data into our table. Control R out of that. Now you don't have to insert one line at a time. You can insert multiple lines in one go. So as you can see here, we've got quite a bit going on. We've got 3 lines that we want to insert in one go. So once again, we're going to specify the columns we want to insert into. We've removed the sale ID because obviously we've learnt our lesson that is an identity column, and we're going to put in the remainder of these columns here. So all you need to do is simply open your brackets, type out the line of data you want to put in, close your brackets, and then stick in another comma. Then once again, brackets, data, brackets, comma, brackets, data, and brackets. So that's pretty much how to do it. As you can see, the only difference is we're inserting 5 characters here as a customer number. As well as that, we've got a negative value in for the decimal and a 1 as the is return. So in this case we are specifying is return, and because we're inserting data into, we've specified this column here, we need to insert data into it, which was why the remaining ones were specified as 0 for those. So once you've typed all that out, let's have a go and see how it runs. Okay, 3 rows affected, pretty good going, happy days. Press Ctrl R and let's have a look, see what went in. I like that. Ctrl 3, and here's our results. Pretty straightforward, very similar to the first row. We've got a minus in here which tells us that this was a return, so we've put in a 1 there. The rest of it, very similar. You can see that Billy Bunter here, he's ordered 2 items in the same order, different order lines. And that is it for inserting data. Pretty straightforward. If you want to play around inserting data, see how you go. You can insert as many rows as you want, and if you hit any errors, just have a look at the error and see if you can work around it. So that's inserting fresh rows of data. But what if we have data in the table and we want to amend that data? Well, we use the command update. Now again, as with all the commands, if we are going to update a value in a table, what we need to do is firstly specify which table we need to update. So again, we've got the schema with a full stop and the table name itself, and then we've got to tell it which column we're going to actually amend. So that's where the set command comes in here, and we're going to set the customer number to a specific value, which is going to be 0. Remember, we looked at Sam Smith here at gmail.com, and she only had 5 digits on a customer number. Obviously that could potentially have been a mistake by whoever entered the data, so we want to correct that and put a little 0 at the front just to bring it back to 6 characters. So what you want to do is make sure that the first set is what you want to change it to. So we want to take the customer number column from the sales, customer sales, and we're going to set that column to that value here. Now if you left it at that and you ran this batch here where you update that column to that value in that table, what it will do is it will amend all the values of the customer numbers to that value. So if you have 1 million customers in there and you set it to that value and you run this query, it will set all 1 million customers to that specific value. There's a way to make sure that you only set the values of certain rows, and that is the where clause. So what we want to do is we want to set the customer number to that where the customer number equals this value here. So what's going to happen when we execute this whole query is that SQL Server will look through the table, pick out any values in the customer number that are this value, and it will amend them to this value here. So let's have a look and see if that works. There we go, it's gone through, no errors. Let's highlight our table and schema again, Control 3, and let's see those results, and there you have it. Sam Smith's customer number is changed to having the little 0 at the front. Very straightforward, very easy. Key thing to note is not to mix up your inserts and your updates. Remember, insert is to insert a fresh row of data. Update is to change the value of existing data. But now, say for example there was an error on some of these order lines and we wanted to delete customers, or in a certain situation you might say, actually we want all of our USA customers on a different SQL Server to our GBR ones. So what we want to do is remove all of our USA entries from this table in one easy go. So if we're going to delete rows of data, we just simply use the delete from command. So once again, you have to specify the schema and the table that you want to delete from. Now if we were to just run this line here, it will go ahead and delete all rows of data, which is not what we want. What we want to do is we want to just delete the data from the table where the country code is equal to USA. So that's all we want to do, is get rid of the USA entries. So what we need to do is highlight that and hit execute. And again, 3 rows affected, so it's telling you that 3 rows were deleted. And if we then grab the schema and table name and press Control 3, there you'll see only the GBR data is left in there. So that's what the delete does. Remember, it deletes entire rows from the table. If you want to delete data out of a column, you just use the update function itself and change it to null, etc. So that's pretty much it. However, there's another cheeky trick that we can do. There's another way of deleting data from tables, and this is used if you want to completely wipe a table of all its data very quickly and rapidly, and that's the truncate table command. Now there's no where clause involved here, it's going to delete everything. So the reason why we've got different delete and truncate is that whenever you run any of these functions, whether they're inserts, updates or deletes, it will copy whatever's deleted, updated or inserted into a table, into the temp DB database. Now remember, that was one of our system databases, tempdb, so it'll always do that. It'll always copy them into a table in there, and that can take time, especially if it's writing to disk. Whereas your truncate table will simply blast through the table, delete all the rows, and not worry about saving it anywhere. So we're going to highlight that, hit execute, command completed successfully, and if we highlight that, Control 3, you'll see that we've got no rows in there. And that is all there is to know about inserts, updates and deletes. So you're more than happy for you to play around inserting data rows, amending their data rows. Key thing to remember is the where clause, to make sure that you only change the things that you want to change, and of course the difference between delete and truncate, which will just wipe your table straight clean. And that is it for episode 4, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in episode 5, where we continue with the SQL journey. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day.